Good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody. It is the 6th day of February, so y'all know what it is. It's time for Black History with Dr. H. And on this roller coaster ride that I've been on with artists, I'm focusing today on one of my favorite things, and that's poetry. I do write poetry, by the way, so shout out to all those of you who are artists and poets. And so I'm going to bring to you today some of the rich history that is the poets that come along. And listen, many of us, we know about the Nikki Giovanni's, we know about Maya Angelou, we know, the Angelou, we know some of these people. We may even know Paul Laurence Dunbar. If you don't, I'm going to tell you about him today. Um, but I wanted to dig into the richness that is the history of Black poets and what we contributed to culture. And, I first got fascinated with poetry when I was in high school. And I told you guys this when I went live in Benefits of Writing about my love for, just the Harlem Renaissance and just, oh my God, I fell in love with Langston Hughes. And that kind of sent me down this spiral into digging into other poets because you have to research styles and different things. And then I love Phyllis Wheatley. And I know people are like, okay, that's just a stretch, but it is, you like what you like. I got some Nikki Giovanni poems in here and I've got that stuff, you know what I mean? And so when you're an artist, you just dig, and you just enjoy what you enjoy. That's the beautiful thing about art is there's no box. You don't put art into a box. And so, I got this on a trip to Boston last year. I could not resist getting it. It's not a collective poems, not her collective poems, but the poems of Phyllis Wheatley. And I just love her, to be honest. And it's just I feel like when I read her poems, I am transported into that moment and I can feel what she was writing about. If you don't know about Phyllis Wheatley, she was America's first published Black poet. She published during the Revolutionary War. Just beautiful. She was born in Africa. She was a slave. um, Sold as a slave in America. This is her story. But she became very widely well known, especially I guess she would be considered a celebrity in our terms today in Europe. I mean, they just loved her. I love her. And so if you don't know about Phyllis Wheatley, I really encourage you to just for yourself learn about the sister because again, she was just phenomenal. She was born around 1753 when back in that time it's hard for us to really date some people, especially like people like Phyllis Wheatley. So circa 1753 is the estimated time of when she was born, somewhere around that time. And but we do know that she died December 5th, 1784. But around as far as her age, as far as when she was really born, we don't really know. There's just guessing that she was born around 1753. So yeah, she died young, but hey, that's Phyllis Wheatley. If you don't know about Paul Laurence Dunbar, and he's known as the father of a whole lot of stuff. But this guy is amazing. He did suffer from tuberculosis and died in Dayton, Ohio at 33. So back then, we didn't have a whole lot of cures. He was born in 1872, and his wife was Alice Dunbar Nelson, and she was also a poet, and I'm going to tell you about her as well. So you probably are familiar with some of Dunbar's work. But he's done some things y'all always know. Tuskegee gets in there somewhere, right? Okay, so he, his writings, afforded him the opportunity to meet a lot of well-known, Black leaders of that time. So he met Frederick Douglass and Booker T. Washington. Get over it, y'all gonna deal with it. So just so you know, very, very much a very profound writer, and a lot of his his works, very passionate stuff. And, again, stuff that you can relate to. You know what I mean? Stuff that you can really feel that it's just, you know. So still very much into, excuse me, civil rights, that kind of stuff. He had a very good handle on the use of language and dialect, and so some of his poems you might know. He wrote a poem called "Dreams," "A Warm Day in Winter." This, just get to know Paul Laurence Dunbar for yourself. That's all I can say. Just some fabulous, just he's done some collective works, not just in poetry, but he's written some short stories and novels. Um, if you don't know, in Maya Angelou's "I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings," one of the lines it is from Dunbar's poem "Sympathy." So, you have to understand that as artists, you draw from other people, you know, just drawing, and then you get inspiration from some of everywhere. And so he's just done some beautiful collective works, and get to know Paul Laurence Dunbar for yourself. That's all I can say. Just get to know him for yourself. His wife was Alice Dunbar Nelson. She was born in 1875. She was 60 years old when she died. She died in 1935. And so she was also a poet. She was a journalist and a political activist. And so she was a Nowlands girl, by the way. And she ended up in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. So you probably know her best for, like Mine Eyes Have Seen. It is a play. Just so y'all know, it is a play. Her first husband was not Paul Laurence Dunbar. Well, yeah, it was Paul Laurence Dunbar. Sorry. Her second husband was Henry Arthur Callis. And so, yeah, y'all can get married again. But yeah, she graduated from Dillard University. Back then it wasn't called Dillard. I think it was called Straight University or something like that. But she is just she has a good style as well. Um, but again, I just kind of want to expose you guys to different voices, and just know what's in your history. You can't grow from your past if you don't know what's in your past. You can't learn if you don't know what's back there. And so she's got some really great writings. If you want to learn about some of these people, go to the poetryfoundation.org, poetryfoundation.org. And you can look up these people for yourself and learn about them. She just, yeah, she's just phenomenal. To me, she taught at Howard High School, State College for college students. With that's currently now Delaware State College and Howard University. She just continued to write. And again, she published Masterpieces of Negro Eloquence in 1914. In 1916, she married Robert J. Nelson. In her later years, she published poetry in Black newspapers such as The Crisis, Ebony and Topaz, and Opportunity. She also edited the Dunbar Speaker and Entertainer. And so just a lot. She was very active. I told you she was a political activist. She's very active in the women's suffrage movement in the Mid-Atlantic states. So, but she's just a great poet. Some of her poems, "I Sit and Sew," "Sonnet," the Idler," "To Madame Curie," "If I Had Known," "The Light at Carney's Point," "You, Inez," and "To the Negro Farmers of the United States." So this is a few of her poems. And so get to know Alice Moore Dunbar Nelson for yourself. Y'all know I love me some Langston Hughes, of course. So again, I got really wrapped up into a lot of his writings. E. Cummings and some of them. E. Cummings is not an African American poet, by the way, but in researching some of the Harlem Renaissance, his writings kind of get in there because of the groove and the feel and stuff. But just Langston Hughes was born in 1902, and very big in the Harlem Renaissance era. He's considered the flowering of Black intellectual, literary, and artistic life. Which was he was the heart of basically the Harlem Renaissance. You know what I mean? Like not just him, but just he was like the central figure, like in the thick of what made the Harlem Renaissance blossom. And yeah, he was born in 1902 and died in 1967. And so just get into it because he wrote not just poems but plays, and he wrote of course novel. He was a novel. He wrote novels and columns and different writings, but I'm probably mostly known for his poetry. So get into Langston Hughes. Jupiter Hammond. He was the first published African American poet, male. I know y'all gonna like, well, I thought you said Phyllis Wheatley was male. Jeez, y'all be busting my chops. But he was born into slavery at Henry Lloyd's estate on Lloyd Neck, Long Island in New York. So just again, this guy, you can find him on poetryfoundation.org. Again, poetryfoundation.org. You can find all these people on this particular website. And another resource for some of you who might want to become a poet and get into poetry and different things like that. Some great information for you here. But some of his first works, The Broadside, An Evening Thought, also referred to as an evening prayer, or An Evening's Thought, Salvation by Christ with Penitential Cries. That was published in 1760. He was considered a religious poet, and you could feel that in his writings. In 1787, he gave a speech to the African Society of New York City titled An Address to the Negroes in the State of New York. He is buried in an unmarked grave on the Lloyd estate. So some of his poems, An Address to Miss Phyllis Wheatley, and then a poem for children with thoughts on death. So take a look and get to know Jupiter Hammond. George Moses Horton. Yeah. He taught himself. He was a slave who taught himself to read. So for those of you who cannot functionally read or write, it's no excuse, because you got people in your history who taught themselves how to read, when for all intents and purposes, it was illegal. And they could have literally died for knowing how to read. So around 1815, he began actually writing poems in his head, saying them aloud and selling them to large crowds of buyers at the weekly Chapel Hill Farmers Market. Students at the nearby University of North Carolina bought his love poems and lent him books. He was born in 1798 and died in 1883. Horton published his first collection of poetry with the help of Carolyn Lee Whiting Hints, a novelist and professor's wife. She transcribed his poetry, and so his first one was The Hope of Liberty, and that came out in 1829. So he was the first African American man, again, to publish a book in the South, and one of the first to publicly protest his slavery in poetry. So really good stuff here. He learned to write in 1832, 3 years later, from his first published work. So remember in my live the other day when I talked about the benefits of writing and ghostwriters, and how a lot of folks on the New York Times bestseller cannot functionally read and write for themselves. Yeah, first ghostwriters, get people to help you get that stuff out. It's not new, 1800s, been going on for a long time. So he had a weekly income from his poems of at least $3 in the 1830s. And with that, he arranged to purchase his time from his owner and became a full-time poet, handyman, and servant at the university. He continued to buy his own time for almost more than 30 years while publishing a second collection of poetry, The Poetical Works, in 1845, and continuing to appeal his freedom. It's amazing. You got to know what's in your history and what people did to be free. And not just in expressing themselves, but to literally be free. After 68 years as a slave, he settled in Philadelphia for at least 17 years of freedom before his death, somewhere around 1883. 68 years as a slave. He got to experience 17 years of freedom before he died. What's in your history? You got to know what's in your history. So, what are some of the poems by him? Early Affection, On Liberty and Slavery, On Summer, George Moses Horton, Myself, Like Brothers, We Meet, The Southern Refugee, Lincoln is Dead, and Weep. And then Gwendolyn Brooks. She was born in 1917 and died in 2000. And she's probably one of the most highly regarded, influential poets, and maybe widely read according to Poetry Foundation. I don't know, but at least of the 20th century. She actually is the first Black author to win the Pulitzer Prize. She's a poetry consultant. She was a poetry consultant to the Library of Congress as well. Woman has some cred. I mean, some cred. Okay. Very much into the political consciousness of the landscape of the day. Her body of work gave her, according to critic George E. Kent, a unique position in American letters. Not only has she combined a strong commitment to racial identity and equality with a mastery of poetic techniques, but she has also managed to bridge the gap between the academic poets of her generation in the 1940s and the young Black militant writers of the 1960s. She was just in there. She's from Topeka, Kansas. Her family moved to Chicago. She was 13 when her first published poem, Eventide, appeared in American Childhood. By the time she was 17, she was publishing poems frequently in the Chicago Defender. That is an African-American Chicago African-American population newspaper. She worked for the NAACP while attending junior college, and her first collection is A Street in Bronzeville, that published in 1945. And so her Pulitzer Prize winning Annie Allen was published in 1949. It was that and A Street in Bronzeville were devoted to small, carefully celebrated terse portraits of the Black urban poor. So very about the social and political consciousness of Blacks, of course, dealing with that. And she married, in Annie Allen, which follows the experiences of a Black girl as she grows into adulthood. Brooks married social issues, especially around gender, with experimentation. One section of the book is an epic poem, The Aeneid, a play on the Aeneid. Langston Hughes, in a review of Annie Allen for Voices, remarked that the people and poems in Gwendolyn Brooks' book are alive, reaching, and very much of today. I told y'all she got some cred. Please go out here to poetryfoundation.org and learn about these people for yourself, because Gwendolyn Brooks, her collective body work is just insane. And, just insane. I'm telling you, it just goes on and on and on, and just later Brooks' poems continue to deal with political subjects and figures such as South African activist Winnie Mandela. Brooks once told interviewer George Stavros, "I want to write poems that will be non-compromising. I don't want to stop a concern with words doing good jobs, which has always been a concern of mine, but I want to write poems that will be meaningful, things that will touch them." Wow. Just wow. Just wow. That's all I can say is just wow, because as a writer, that's what you want. You want your words to be meaningful. You want your words to touch people, spark something in them. And I feel like some of her stuff has done that. And maybe I'll do a live one day and just read some poems from our history. Maybe I'll do a part 2 and just read some of the poems, read some Paul Laurence Dunbar, some stuff to you. I can tell you right now, y'all have probably heard some stuff. Yeah. So, yeah, yeah, um, yeah. I forgot to tell y'all too. We're gonna talk about some of our old Negro spiritual hymns too. I'm gonna talk about that tomorrow, especially "Lift Every Voice and Sing," written by we mostly always say James Weldon Johnson, but there was another author, J. Rosamond Johnson. So I'm gonna talk about that tomorrow and some other, just Negro spirituals, where they come from, the soul of them. When we sing songs, we don't really know the backstory, but you need to know the backstory and where it comes from. So then when you sing it, you can sing it with a soul and passion and heart that it was originally intended to be. And you can see how, man, that stuff cycles right back on around and you still feel the same way. But anyway, some of the writings of Gwendolyn Brooks, An Aspect of Love, Alive in the Ice and Fire, The Ballad of Rudolph Reed, The Bean Eaters, the Blackstone Rangers, Henry Rago, Gay Chaps at the Bar, The Children of the Poor, Boy Breaking Glass, Jesse Mitchell's Mother, Kitchenette Building, The Life of Lincoln West, and A Light and Diplomatic Bird. There's so much more. I mean, she's just got so much more. But again, I just wanted to kind of shed some light on a few of some of historic poets in our history, so you could appreciate a lot of the artists that are out here. The genetics that are out there now that kind of brings it. Know what's in your history so you could grow from it, and yeah, glean on it. Have a good day, you guys. Remember to spread lots of love and light.